おやすみなさい。メルエム。私もすぐ行きますから。
Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and as you've seen from this thumbnail and of course the title, that we're going to be talking about something that's not going to be easy to talk about. This is going to be quite emotional to talk about in regards to this particular anime, as I've gone to that stage of this show now. I've gone there. I've gone to that episode, that infamous episode that a lot of people have been telling me about ever since day one, you know, when I started the series of Hunter x Hunter. Yeah. This is a tough one. Where do I begin? Okay, so obviously if you were on Patreon, you would have seen how I felt about the episode and what kind of impact it had on me. But today I want to just give you guys an in-depth talk, more of a talk than a review, as how I feel about this show and this particular arc and the characters that were involved in this particular episode. Now, of course, the episode I'm talking about is episode 135. Probably one of the most emotional, heart-wrenching episodes I've ever witnessed. And it's not exactly the episode itself that caused that. It's everything that has built up until then, and to see how it ended, it was truly hard to watch. Like, to anybody that's watching this, if you have not seen the show, if you are not familiar with Hunter x Hunter, I do recommend not watching this video, because I don't want to spoil the show on you guys, talking about these characters and everything that's happened, of course. So I do highly recommend checking out Hunter x Hunter for yourselves. It is an absolutely incredible show. This anime is so well written, and honestly, it's probably the most unpredictable shonen I've ever watched. So go watch it if you haven't. If you're looking for a good show, if you're looking for a good anime that's got everything that you want in a shonen plus much more, then Hunter x Hunter is for you. So go check it out and stay away from this video until you get to where I was in this particular anime. Now guys, episode 135 was kind of the end of the Chimera Ant arc. This is where it kind of just ended, you know. This is where everything is okay now, I want to say, even though for me as a viewer it's not okay, not from what I witnessed from this episode. So first of all, I want to talk about the characters that are involved in this and everything that's happened in between. Now, the two primary focus characters in this particular arc to me, and that had the most influence on everything that is so impactful of this episode, is of course the King, Miriam, and Komugi, the little girl. These two characters are truly remarkable in their own respects. Of course, the King, being the main antagonist of the arc, was this villainous, power-hungry monster, because that's all he was. He was born to rule. He was born to dominate the human race and reimagining the world in his own image. And it seemed as if, you know, this character wasn't going to change. Like, this is going to be your typical shonen antagonist that was going to just look for power constantly and try defeat the main protagonist. Try just kill everybody out of existence and just dominate the world. And that's, of course, basically every shonen antagonist that you've heard of. There are some exceptions with other anime, but we won't go there. But this one in particular, things took a curveball. Like, seriously, a lot of things that have happened in this arc, I truly could not predict it, and that is the truth. And I think that goes out for a lot of people that have viewed the show and have watched it from the beginning, because your first initial thoughts of Hunter x Hunter coming into episode 1 up until like episode 5 and 6, you're like, yeah, you know, this is your feel good anime. This is your typical feel good, positive shonen anime with a really positive and happy protagonist, just following him on his adventure. Like what could possibly go wrong? Of course, the protagonist is going to win and prevail no matter what. But this is not that. This is definitely not your typical shonen. When you delve deeper into this show, you will know that this goes in different directions that I've never expected from any show, period. And that's what truly defines this, So the characters we're going to be talking about, like I said, is Komugi and Miriam the King. Now, as I've stated already, the king was this just power-hungry monster, and it seemed that he wasn't going to change until this other character stepped into the equation, Komugi. And the reason she stepped in was because the king wanted to challenge everything and everyone that was on top of whatever it is they do, and that even included intellect. That included his mental power as well, as he challenged all of these best players at certain different kind of games, board games, etc. And then he came to one particular game that fascinated him a lot, and that was Gongi. Now, this is not an actual game that exists. Thanks to my Patreons for telling me that. This is actually a fictional game created specifically for the anime. Now, it's an incredibly interesting game. I would like to know if maybe somewhere, somehow, somebody actually came up and made this game in real life, because it looks like it's incredibly strategic. Now, going into this, of course, Komugi is actually renowned in Gongi. She is one of the best players, if not the best, actually, scratch that. She was the best player in existence of Gongi, and of course the king wanted to challenge that because he wants to be on top no matter what, and that's exactly what he did. He challenged this girl, and every single time, no matter how hard and how much the king tried, he could not win. Komugi, this innocent, cute, lovable character that came in here and shook this anime world, has truly been a blessing for me as a viewer. Coming in here, she's like, okay, she seems a bit strange. She seems super timid. She's innocent. She's as if she's not capable of doing much on her own. She just gives off that vibe. But then when she plays Gongi, the tables turn and things get so intense as the king is just infuriated time and time again as he continues to lose against this innocent, timid looking girl. When she opens her eyes are beautiful. She's an amazing looking character, and then to my surprise, and I'm sure to many viewers at home as well, that she is in fact blind. Yes, she is a blind Gongi player and the best at what she can do. And it all happens, and it's the way she plays it is because she says the moves in her head. She obviously knows the board, like no one else. The board is there. I'm sure she can visualize it, and she says her coordinates to the set pieces, and that's how you play the game. Honestly, I don't know the rules of this game, but when you watch this anime, it's incredibly intense. And of course, the king, frustrations build over and over again because he just can't understand. He can't fathom why his mental intellect is not superior to this innocent girl. And he just continues to challenge, game after game. And as in the background we have a spectator, and that spectator of course is one of the royal guards, and that's Puhuf. And as Puhuf sits there, reading, spectating everything that's going on, he starts noticing little by little different changes in the character of the king. And the king is changing, and the king doesn't even realize this is happening. But as he keeps playing with Komugi, he realizes this girl, she's fascinating. She really blows my mind. I did not know the human species was capable of doing what they were doing, Bills. This is where a relationship between this killer monstrosity of an antagonist, Miriam the ant, and this innocent, adorable, timid little girl called Komugi. And this is where the relationship begins. And as the spectator, Puhuf, looks on, he begins to grow concerned, because he knows that there is something not right here. The king is showing emotions that he's never showed before, and Puhuf doesn't want that, because as far as Puhuf is concerned, the king is supposed to rule over all. And this little girl shouldn't be anything to him. And of course, something happens. This is where Netero and Zeno, they step in. They put a full-scale attack on the palace. And then this is where shit hits the fan, quite literally. As when the king and Komugi were playing the game, this all happened. This all happened at once in a blink of an eye. The king didn't even see it coming. And, as incredible as it was, Komugi got injured in the process. And when that happened, the king had showed so much fury, so much rage, so much inner hatred, that it emitted such negative, devilish-like energy that if as much as being in the presence of that aura or that nen, it could quite literally break you down into pieces. And that is what happened when Pito, the other royal guard, came rushing forward as she sensed something was wrong, and that is when the energy hit her like a ton of bricks, and she just burst into tears. She broke down because she could see the one person that she was created for in a state that she'd never thought she'd experience in her life, and that made her break down in tears. And how this anime is visually presented to the viewer, as me watching this show, how everything is visually presented gives you an exact feeling of how it all happens. Everything that the characters are feeling, you feel, because it's visually presented in a way that it's easier for the viewer to understand what exactly is happening, what emotions are being spread around. And that's what I love about the show a lot. And that particular moment really showcased that. It really showcased that. And this is where the king truly showed how much he cared about Komugi. And that's how Puhuf knew that there was something wrong. Of course, Puhuf was being distracted elsewhere, as the intruders were kind of a concern right now, and they had to, do what they needed to do. And of course, this is where Netero and Zeno step in, and a challenge is set out to fight the king. And of course, we've been all waiting for it. We've been waiting for Netero versus the king. And I know I should have done an episode on it. I know I should have done a review on this particular episode, but I just didn't. I don't know why. I should have, I guess. If you guys want me to cover that, then let me know. Everything that has happened in this fight between Netero and the king was absolutely incredible. It's definitely hands down one of my favorite fights of all shonen. It is so good. It's so incredible. It's so intense as well. Just knowing Netero's backstory, everything he's been through, the training he's been through, and to see that all kind of come together in this fight was truly astounding. I mean, he even took the king by surprise. Now, when this ended, of course, is where something incredible happened. Something so heartbreaking, as I've spoke about this on Patreon. And I did find that this episode broke my heart as well. But coming to the end, as it seemed as if the king had the upper hand, the king had this one, because Netero had thrown everything he had at him. Everything. Every single attack that he could have thrown at the king, it ended up not being enough to kill him. And I think Netero knew that. I think Netero knew that from the beginning, that he always looked for a challenge, and he never could find anybody superior to himself until the day he found out about the king. And I think this is where he took the advantage of the situation and said, you know what? This is where I'm going to be tested to my utmost limits, to the point where I don't think I will win and I will be defeated. And it seemed as if that was the case until the very end. This was just terrifying at the same time. But as Netero stated to the king, don't ever underestimate the humans. And something that I wasn't predicting, as always, never predicting anything in this show because it's so unpredictable. He pierces his chest, or towards his heart, if you will. And I think the trigger of what was actually inside him, this device, was if his heart stopped, that is when this device set up. And the device that I'm talking about was a nuclear bomb. And you know, the nickname this bomb was given, as you know, the pattern that the smoke created was a rose, so they called it the old man's rose, or the poor man's rose. And that's where the king first ever felt another emotion that only the humans seem to have, and that is fear. The king feared for his life because he knew that he may have checked the king, or Netero, but Netero checkmated that match. And that is where this incredibly ridiculous explosion happened, and it seemed the king was done for, you know. And everything that's happened in between that, of course, is something to take note of. But coming into it, then of course the royal guards were in absolute, you know, shock about where the heck is the king. They see this explosion, they don't know what's going on. They came rushing straight to him to find him, and of course, who finds him other than Youpi? And he puts himself in danger to find the king. He finds him what was left of the king, and it seemed as if the king was left to die. There was nothing more than just a shell and holding on to life. I don't know how. If you have seen the state he was in, you would think that he should be dead, but he was grasping on to life. It seemed as if the king would have died if they didn't get there. If they got there any later than they did. But the king survived, as the royal guards give all of their life energy to the king to survive. The aftermath of this explosion, for the king, it seemed as if he had lost his memory. Well, parts of it anyway. A lot of things he had lost. And, you know, he wants to remember everything. And, you know, as he makes his way back to the palace, and as Poohoof and Youpi, you know, refresh his memory on certain things, his certain agenda, his plan that he originally had. At first, Poohoof was like, yes, you know, the king has forgotten about Komogi. He's forgotten about her, and he can't remember her. And then he realizes as they progress that the king is remembering different things from certain images, certain words. It's, you know, it's awakening his memory, and then, you know, immediately Poohoof was like, oh my god. If he sees anything to do with Komogi or anything that has influenced him at all, the Gungi board, the Gungi pieces, he's going to remember everything. And Poohoof, with all of his power, you know, he dispersed his clones or whatever to get rid of everything, all the evidence, and immediately tries sending one of his clones to find Komogi and kill her, so that the king has no recollection of her whatsoever because it can't be triggered. Going forward on into the future of this arc, then, this is where the king is in a state of remembering everything, you know, and it's just putting piece by piece together. And then he notices a piece from the Gungi game, and that sparked something. He knew that in that room that he was standing in, that he used to play Gungi with somebody that he truly cared about, somebody that he was fascinated about. And that was incredible. I mean, it was such a simple thing to trigger someone's memory, but in truth, in reality, I think that is the case. I think certain things that impact your memory of things, like take for instance, you know, nostalgia. There's always going to be memories of your past when you're reminded of certain things that you grew up to love as a kid, you know, little elements, you know, even if it's a statue, a figurine, you know, a game, a magazine, you know, something, a TV show, whatever it was as a kid that you enjoyed so much, you hold on to it because it's so precious to you as a kid. You know, it stays with you as an adult, and when you go back and you see those things, it immediately rushes in so much memories that you've had when you were younger. And the same kind of thing happened in this show as you know, Miriam finally found some pieces of Gungi that sparked that connection, that sparked that memory of someone that he used to play with, but not quite all of it. He could not remember who she was and who this person was at all until the confrontation with Welfheim. I always forget his name. And this is where, you know, the king confronted him about Youpi, because something happened to Youpi. We won't get into that territory, but of course, I'm sure you guys know what's happened there. And, you know, Welfheim just said he just died in an instant. And this is where it all occurs. As in the previous episode to this one that I'm talking about, Poohoof coughed out blood. And at first I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand why. Why was he coughing up blood? Is he dying? And the same happens to Youpi, as he had a nosebleed. And it seemed, as Welfheim, had said, that he just died. He choked and he just died. So then it just kind of, it came to me, and it's like, okay, wait a second. So it seems that the poor man's rose, not only was it a devastating explosion, it also contained extremely highly poisonous substance, and it dispersed it wherever anybody was near where the nuclear went off. They were dead, basically, or going to die. And the king, Poohoof, Youpi, the three of them were completely exposed to this, and of course they were eventually going to die. And I thought that was a bit of a mind blow, because coming into this I thought we were going to have an epic battle between Gon and Miriam, even though Gon is on a different level than Miriam. Although when you will know what I'm talking about, but episode 131, yeah, you think then he'd be able to fight the king. And honestly, I was kind of thinking that was going to happen. I was thinking we were going to see that fight. But it seems as if whatever has happened with this nuclear explosion is the real reason how the king gets defeated. But it's not that simple. Not for the viewer, anyway. As we progress, and as Welfheim is threatened by his life and mutters the words, Komugi. And that is what triggers something in the king's mind and opens the biggest door in his mind, releasing all of the information, all of the memories that he's had previously to the explosion, and it comes rushing in and it awakens the king as if it's some sort of rebirth, and he becomes somebody else, and he realizes everything in between. And Welfheim thought that this is it, he's dead, he's gonna die. And as the king walked away from him, he had his outburst. He told him that you're not the king, there's only one king that I follow, and his name is Gyro. And after screaming that at the king, he thought that, okay, I'm dead now. And the king just turned around and said, I hope you find him, and I hope you live the remaining of your life as a human. And this is what completely finished off Poohoof, as hearing those words devastated him to the highest degree, because it's not how he envisioned the king, it's not what he was made for, and it's not how he wanted the king to act. And to see and hear Miriam say those things, Poohoof was so devastated that it finished him off. I know he was already dying, but I think after that final blow to Poohoof's heart, that was it for him, and he just choked and died. And the king is obviously aware of what's happening to his body. He's aware that he's dying, because as Poohoof and Youpi gave all their life energy to the king, he had become a part of them and felt what they felt and knew what they were thinking, knew their emotions inside and out, and knew that he was going to in fact die as well. So he didn't want anything more. There was nothing else that mattered to the king. Ruling was not there anymore. Power was not there anymore. There was one thing, or should I say one person, that was in the mind of the king in this entire thing, and that was Komugi. Komugi was in his mind, and he confronted Pam as he felt her out. He knew where she was, and he said, look, I'm only here for one thing, and you're probably aware of this already, and I know I'm dying, but I want to share my last few moments with Komugi. And that is so, to me, that's incredibly, it's so incredible. There's no words. There isn't actually a physical word to describe how I felt about that, but it was truly emotional hearing that from the king. And Pam was standing there like, why are you acting like this? She was so confused. Like, you're this incredibly powerful terrorizing monster, and now you're acting like this. And she knew that, you know, Pam is undergoing a transformation herself. She was kidnapped, she was turned into half ant, so you can kind of felt as if that she was half ant, so she somewhat worshipped the king as well. And to see the king like that, to her, just like Poohoof, was so devastating. And the king was just about to go down on one knee and plead. And Pam, seeing that, you know, it broke her heart. She said, don't do it. She did not want the king to do that. And as the king stood up, she told the king where Komugi was. And he found her tucked away in a little casket, sleeping. As adorable as she is. And that is where the king truly had a smile on his face for the first time ever. And was so happy. So happy as he found a person that he truly cared about. And I think everything that the king went through in regards fighting Netero, the matches of Gungi that he had with Komugi, hearing her stories growing up, and you know, everything that she didn't have, the things that she was responsible for, her family, it changed everything within Miriam the king. And this is where that Pam already stated that to the king, that is it okay if I can watch your final moments with her? And this is where it gets incredibly heartbreaking. Like, it's so hard for me to even watch this and even talk about it, because it is tough. It is truly tough. Just knowing everything that these characters have gone through and seeing this final scene of this arc. I mean, wow. And how they spend their last moments together, I'm sure you can guess, is by playing Gungi together over and over and over again. And you know, you can tell by the king that he's incredibly happy. He loves being with her. He loves talking to her. He loves playing Gungi with her. And then she bursts out into tears. And the king is just like, why are you crying? Like, why are you so upset? Is there something I said, something I done? And she just said, is it wrong for me to be so happy? Because she's so, I want to say that she's so modest, you know, incredibly modest. Like, when it comes to anything that's good for her, she seems as if she has to pay for it or do something in return for it, or she shouldn't be feeling it and it's not right to feel it. But she felt true happiness as she loved being with the king, and she enjoyed his company and enjoyed playing the one thing that she cherishes the most, and that's the game of Gungi. And this is where the king said, look, I suppose I need to tell you that I'm dying. I have been poisoned. And that is, you know, and like Komugi, like, I'm sorry I'm muttering up my words now, but Komugi just doesn't take it as an initial shock. She just takes it in her stride, and she says that she's just happy to be there, and they continue to play Gungi over and over again, constantly checking up on each other. And the king did state that the poison, if you're exposed by anyone that is poisoned, it is contagious and you can die too. And they just kept playing, and that didn't faze her because she was in true and utter happiness as well as the king. And that is just one of those moments that, to me, as a viewer, is mind-blowing. Because, as I stated previously, the king was the antagonist, the monster, the Chimera Ant King, the one to rule over all, to becoming the most human of most characters in this show, becoming the most caring, loving character in this show. Like, how can such a transition be pulled off in a show like this? I don't know. Like, I've said it multiple times before, Hunter x Hunter is one of the most well-written pieces of art that I've ever witnessed. And seeing such a transition from a character that started the way it did was truly inspiring and truly incredible. It kind of sends that message as, no matter what you have done in the past, no matter how monstrosity it can be or how ridiculous it was, that no matter what, there is always room for change. And that's happened here. And you know, the episode ended in the most heartbreaking fashion as the king felt his last breath and asked Komugi to hold his hand. And she did, and she held him in her arms. And the two of them passed away in pure and utter happiness. Like, wow. How can such a thing happen in a show that starts off with a kid in funky shorts and a funky green outfit with spiky hair fishing, laughing and bouncing around? Like, how can a show start off like that and end an arc coming to the end of the show completely, but not there yet, like this, with heart-wrenching, emotional, incredible transitioning moments of characters? Like, how can it end like that? Like, from watching a show that made you so happy to a show that made me so sad. Like, I don't know how such a thing happens, but it did in this show. Hunter x Hunter. It's just incredible. You know, it's incredible. That's all I really have to say. I know I said a lot. I've been recording for 40 minutes or so. That's how I feel about these characters. That's how I feel about this arc. And that's how I feel about this show. And I know I'm not finished yet. We have more episodes to check out. You can watch them all on Patreon. I will be releasing a lot of them. I will be, you know, unlocking them on Patreon, if you will, for you guys to watch over here on YouTube. So you can just head over and watch them. I might do that straight after this video goes live. So you can watch the first, I don't know, 50 to, well, we're on a high number, I think, on YouTube. So I might release 100 plus episodes, just so you guys can watch them on Patreon. Obviously no payment required, but the latest episodes will be still apart for the Patreon warriors. But that's everything I have to say about this episode. As you know, it's quite emotional. It's quite a tough thing to talk about, but and I know this is a long video on the channel, but I feel like it's important to cover certain things that I find quite impactful as a viewer, as an anime lover, as an anime enthusiast, as someone that actually appreciates everything to do with entertainment and pop culture. Like, of course, when I see something that has something incredible like this, of course I have to talk about it, and I will put it on the channel because that's what I do. Anyway, guys, that's all I had to say about this. I hope you guys enjoyed everything that I talked about of the characters and this episode. And I know I talked more than just this episode, but you know, leading up to it, if you will. So thank you so much for tuning in. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Super long, I know. If you're still here, good on you. But yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed it, and of course subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this from me and other stuff that I have here. So check out the channel if you haven't already. But like I said, that does end it here, and as always, stay geeky, stay cool, be awesome, and be happy, and I'll see you dudes in my next video. See you later, dudes.